Do you suffer from persistent night terrors, daytime hallucinations, or extreme anxiety brought about by the colors red and green? The ongoing sleeplessness caused by any of these symptoms can affect your entire day. But it doesn't have to be this way. For a good night of uninterrupted, dreamless sleep, ask your doctor about Hypnosil CR. Hypnosil has been rigorously evaluated by the FDA and should not be taken by children under the age of 17 or women who are pregnant or may become pregnant. Hypnosil may result in addiction, increase in blood pressure or cholesterol, feelings of persecution, and dreams about goats or snakes. You should stop taking Hypnosil immediately and call your doctor if you experience sudden changes to your hair color. You can sleep again with Hypnosil CR.
Every town has an Elm Street.
Hello and welcome back once again, folks, to Every Town Has an Elm Street, the Ark of E's exclusive podcast, talking about all things Freddy Krueger. I am one half of the Brothers Blanchard, your host, Matthew J. Blanchard. With me, as always, is my brother,
Patrick J. Blanchard.
obviously the other half of the Brothers Blanchard, if you hadn't put that together. It's been several months.
Maybe one day we'll explain the fact that we both have the same middle initial.
Oh my craziness. And welcome back to what is effectively our final conversation about Freddy Krueger, unless, another movie comes along. I'm not going to exclude the possibility that one day we'll have to record a companion to this.
I'm not putting it out of the realm of possibility just yet.
Yeah, I wouldn't. But I think there's always the possibility we come back to talk about more Freddy Krueger stories, but for right now, we have reached the end of the Freddy Krueger run. So today, we're going to wrap out our journey in Springwood, Ohio.
Because it's now finally Springwood, Ohio.
It's been Springwood, Ohio for a
Didn't
while.
start out there.
It didn't start out that way, but it's been there for a while. Since 1987. So, for 21 years, it has been Springwood, Ohio.
Yeah, no, but this movie was made in 2003, so that was only, 16 years?
Right, but it had still been Springwood, Ohio for quite some time. So, yes, this is our last episode of Every Town Has an Elm Street. So, how are these people going to be able to find us next week if they want to keep listening to us talk about old school horror movies?
Well, next week we've been on the East Coast with
we have
Camp Crystal Lake Revisited.
We're technically revisiting it right now.
We've been in Ohio with Springwood here on Every
Yes.
Town Has an Elm Street.
Yes, we have.
So next week they're going to have to go down south, down to the bayou.
Ooh.
We're going to talk
Exotic.
about Louisiana outside New Orleans
Oh.
for a little Honey Island swamp tours.
Honey Island Swamp Tours. That's right, folks. Next week, join us right here, same bat time, same bat channel, for our new limited series, Honey Island Swamp Tours, our exclusive look at
Adam Green's series Hatchet.
That's right. A series that is predicated on the love of 80s slasher movies, like the ones we started out talking about way back at the beginning of our run-through franchises back in April. Friday the 13th, strong influence. Nightmare on Elm Street, strong influence. Those kinds of bloody and not necessarily plot-driven slasher movies that are fun to talk about. I'm looking forward to revisiting our good friend Kane Hodder, who spoiler alert, is in Freddy vs. Jason in a surprise cameo that the director didn't even know about.
Wait, what now?
Oh, yes! That's right. There's some new dirt about Freddy vs. Jason we're going to talk about tonight because, frankly, we can talk about Victor Crowley and Hatchet all we want.
Next week.
Next week. Exactly. This week, we are wrapping out the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. And we're doing that a little bit differently than some people would expect. I know most people would have assumed we would have done this chronologically and we'd be ending with the Nightmare on Elm Street reboot. But we did that last week because, frankly, I didn't want to end on a stinker. I wanted to end on a Good Friday movie.
Man, you don't go out on a downbeat unless you're Empire.
Exactly. Well, because that's not going out. You know that there's a Return of the Jedi coming after. You know you're coming back for the sequel. Why would you? Psh, come on. So no, I don't want to end the Freddy conversation talking about someone who's not Freddy. Because let's face it, folks, Freddy Krueger. There's one guy who is Freddy Krueger, and that's Robert Englund.
Yes, only Robert.
So instead, we're going to talk about what's important. That's Freddy versus Jason. But we have a word from a review, if you will, a taste test that you and I conducted just a little bit ago before this episode started.
Yeah.
The good folks at Funko, purveyors of all things plastic figures that don't really move, have created a Funko cereal that comes in multiple milk color changing flavors, none of which actually list what the flavor is, just what the color is. I have in my hot little hand the Freddy Krueger Nightmare on Elm Street cereal exclusive to FYE that turns your cereal blood red. It's got a nice little picture of a Funko Pop Vinyl Freddy Krueger trying to reach out to eat some red cereal. It looks like Apple Jacks, tastes like a really weird Apple Jack. It says it's the tasty treat that's fun to eat. It's a multigrain cereal. 140 calories a serving. A serving is 1 1/3 cup.
That's a big serving for cereal.
That's a big serving of cereal. I'll grant that. Yeah. It's made in San Dimas, California. So Bill and Ted manufactured our cereal. That's kind of sweet.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks, Ted.
Exactly. So yeah, we tried this earlier. Full disclosure, we originally did it on mic, but we were having an audio issue, so I ran it back and we started over. And as we were starting over, I noticed a look on your face, so I spoke to it immediately and I said, "I don't plan on eating that again."
I couldn't do it, folks. I mean, I wanted to be in the moment for you.
Right.
But
Well, I mean, full disclosure on top of full disclosure, we tried it before the initial recording, and we did eat it a second time.
yeah, I don't know how I got roped into that. You started expounding upon it, and then you're like, "Oh, here."
Well, I told people we'd be doing it, so I wanted to make sure, I wasn't an asshole. And like, no, we didn't do that because fuck it. It was nasty. I mean, it's not nasty. It's just very sugary.
It's like sickly sweet.
Sickly sweet.
I've
Freddy Krueger himself.
Oh, good transition.
Thank you. And speaking of Freddy Krueger, because we're not gonna tear apart the Funko products. If you like Funko, go check them out. If you want black cereal, there's an Elvira one for you. They also make a Jason Voorhees, both of which are exclusive at FYE. So if you're looking for these on eBay and you're seeing that they're $60, go to your FYE. That's where you can find them, folks. But enough about toys and sickly sweet cereal. We are here to talk about Freddy versus Jason. Finally, the meeting of two gigantic titans whom we've been talking about since April 13th. Sean S. Cunningham and Bob Shea.
Those guys know how to spend a buck.
And they desperately want to make a buck.
But the interesting thing is that we finally get to this big meeting between the two of them, and then they both pull away from the project.
They do.
Just as it hits production.
Well, I mean, one of them does stick around in a way through production. I mean, we get a Bob Shea cameo.
Yeah.
So it counts. But yeah, so we talked a little bit about it way back when we did this in our original series, Camp Crystal Lake Revisited. We're revisiting the revisitation. We're back at Crystal Lake, or we will be in just a few minutes' time.
Because it's so close to Springwood.
So close to Springwood. Ohio, New Jersey. They're right around the corner, right? Sure.
Oh, yeah. You get there in one night while it's still dark.
So the second people sort of embraced the Freddy persona, sort of took him into their horror-loving hearts. The question became, who's cooler? Who's better? Who'd win in a fight? Freddy or Jason? On your on the playground, who were you with?
I gotta go with I was always a Jasoner.
See, I always thought Freddy. I was terrified of Freddy, but I thought he's crafty. Jason's just stupid.
I always went with the fact that, Jason is he's too dumb to die.
Right. Which we have said a number of times. I believe I actually have that in a note. So much so, I took it as a note rewatching.
And as a child, I hadn't seen any of these movies.
Right.
I had just seen all the commercials for them. And we touched on this on New Nightmare. Every kid knows who Freddy is. Exactly.
So, but that was sort of just a cultural, like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if?
Yep.
How do you do this? And then 1987 happens. Paramount has Jason Lives, which is very successful for Paramount. And New Line has Dream Warriors, which is terribly successful for New Line. And they start talking. And the lawyers and the money people start discussing. And they shake out a structure that would be legally permissible in which to make a Freddy and Jason team-up movie. It would involve one of the companies letting the other produce, release, distribute the film whilst not making a film of their own. So the idea is not, hey, we'll work together. It's, all right, here's the way the contracts work. One of us gets to make the movie and make the money, and the other one has to sit on their fucking hands for a summer. Suffice to say.
So that's kind of why we get Friday the 13th Part 7, A New Blood.
Yes, exactly. Neither one of them wants to take a backseat to the other, so they shake their hands, they go their separate ways. We get A New Blood, and we get The Dream Master. Fuck it, we're gonna do our own thing.
Yep.
We're off and running. However, the conversations that sort of led in that direction, they sort of inform the movies that actually get made, in some ways. Hey, wouldn't it be cool if we did Jason versus Freddy? Yeah, cool. Oh wait, yeah, this is the deal. We're not going to do that. Well, who could we use instead of Freddy? Carrie.
We could use Carrie.
Right.
Like
well, we can't use actual Carrie. So scale it back a bit.
So we can have some other telekinetic chick.
Right. Hey, wouldn't it be cool if, all the kids affected by the dreams find out that there's another powerful entity out there who could possibly put Freddy in check?
You mean like if they thought how that role would have been fulfilled by Jason?
Yeah, well, yeah, but I mean, who could do it in this? I know. We'll make it the Lord. It can't be Jason. It'll be the Lord, and we'll call it the Dream Master.
And we'll have Alice be the proponent.
Exactly.
The meek, weak-willed Alice.
Exactly.
It doesn't sound like we're gonna get this movie that we wanted.
No. Well, and it really seems like it's not gonna happen until an amazing stroke of bad luck. So the good folks making the Friday movies, they make a stinker. They make a really big stinker. I mean, it makes money, not a lot.
Not a lot.
It makes its budget back barely, but it's the kind of it's the kind of film that makes Paramount, who has the distribution deal, go,
Yeah, we're not going to do this anymore.
we're not going to release these. This was bad, guys. And Paramount openly expresses that they're embarrassed by Jason Takes Manhattan. As well they fucking should be, folks. It's bad. It's a bad movie. I love it to death, but it's a bad movie. So the ball starts rolling on this, on the death of the franchise, basically. Paramount's like, it's dead. So
we're not going
doing
to
it.
distribute these
Fuck
any longer.
This. Well, at this point, they're like, it's dead, but they're not relinquishing the rights.
Yeah.
Okay. They have to be lobbied for that to happen first. They're like, it's dead. We're whatever. The distribution rights are going to sit on our shelf. We're not going to make another one of these. Fuck y'all. So Sean Cunningham, who loves money,
Returns to the franchise, a
Yes.
place that he has not been since
Exactly.
1980.
and well, he's sort of initially pulled back in by the Boston investors,
Yeah.
who are like, our cash cow.
What about our cash cow, dudes?
All right, our cash cow is tied up in that we fucked up. So how do we unfuck this? And Cunningham's like, no problem. I'm gonna come back. We'll lobby for the rights back because that was always part of the deal. That a select number of producers and copyright owners could lobby for the distribution rights back.
Yeah.
I am that person. I will do that. And then we will shop this thing around. So in 1992, he gets the rights back from Paramount and starts shopping around the concept of do you want to make a Friday the 13th movie? Hey, do you want to make a Friday the 13th movie? Hi, Weinstein's, do you want to make a Friday the 13th? You don't? Okay. Hey, who wants to make a Friday the 13th movie? I know. Bob Shea wants to make a fucking Friday the 13th movie because Bob Shea wants to put Jason in a movie with Freddy.
Yep.
But Bob Shea doesn't want to put Jason. I mean, he wants to put Jason in a movie with Freddy, but the franchise, the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, has just wrapped up in a way that, frankly, Bob Shea feels is legitimately final. Like, he felt that was, all right, nail in the coffin. That's how we go out. There's only one way to go out bigger than that. Just one. So, yeah, okay, we're done here. Oh, wait, you want to sell me the rights to Friday the 13th? Okay. So, Bob Shea immediately says yes, buys the distribution rights, and two parallel productions go into production in 1992. One is Jason Goes to Hell. The other is Freddy versus Jason.
Yes.
There's not a Freddy movie that comes out of this conversation. There's no plan to kickstart a new Freddy movie. That doesn't happen until later on when Wes Craven comes back. And that kind of derails this movie for a little bit, the Freddy versus Jason of it all. Yeah, so Bob's literally just thinking, okay, we'll do a team-up movie like it's Universal Monster Tour,
Yeah.
and we're done. If that kickstarts interest, maybe we'll do another Freddy later on. But no big deal here. Which is amazing when you really look at that. Like, Bob was legitimately of the opinion that we're done here. It's over. No more solo Freddy movies. Until Wes Craven's like, hey, I want to make another
I know
Freddy movie.
But it's so funny that Bob Shea is like, we're done, when Wes Craven wanted to be done in 1984.
Right, exactly.
And Bob Shea said, no.
No, we're milking the shit out of this. We're riding this corpse all the way until it stops moving.
What a difference 8 years makes.
Right? So, I looked back at some of the versions that we talked about very briefly, but I actually went and I read two of them. I read the Ron Moore, Brandon Braga version, and I read
That's the one with the weird trial.
Yes, it's a take where he's not Jason Voorhees. He's not our Jason Voorhees. He's not the one we know and love. he's a real life character, a real life killer, named Jason Voorhees, who is the inspiration for a series of movies called Friday the 13th. So he's a real world person who inspires a fake movie that is a real movie in our world. And this is in a world in which Freddy Krueger exists. So Jason has to be realistic and can't be the Jason from the Paramount movies in Freddy's world.
So what I'm getting from this
Yeah.
is that somewhere between 1991 and 1994/96, everybody was bopping around and just hitting on this whole meta horror concept.
Yes. Very much so. Very much so. Yeah. It's interesting script. It's very uneven. It's got great dialogue, and it's got a great sort of central structure to it. But
Like-
it's a Ron Moore story, so that makes sense.
Wait, so it's got like this central structure to it.
Yeah.
Like it's a Star Trek or a Battlestar Galactica.
Pretty much, yes. Yes. And then I read the Peter Briggs draft.
That I can't remember which one that one is.
Oh, that's the one with the FBI agents who are named after musicians.
Does this have the Cult of Freddy?
Yes.
Okay.
It does. Now I have to sort of I'm gonna throw this out there. Peter Briggs, who wrote an unused draft of this movie, also wrote an unused draft of another movie called Highlander: The Source. And I met Mr. Peter Briggs on the Highlander message board years and years and years ago, and he and I exchanged information, and we had a conversation.
Wait, did you just say the source and not the sorcerer?
The Source. Yes, the fifth Highlander movie, not the third.
I'm having a
Yes, that would be an interesting franchise to do if we ever move away from horror movies, the Highlanders. But Mr. Peter Briggs wrote an unused draft for this, and wrote an unused draft for the fifth Highlander movie, and we've exchanged conversations back in the past. We've talked about this script. We've talked about the Highlander script. I've read both. Excellent scripts. Both of which are probably a little unproducible because they're very visual heavy, and the visuals are strong and not necessarily shootable. But good stuff, like great storytelling. I just don't know if it's the right movie. So he wrote a draft where, because all of the early drafts tried to tie the origins together, and most of them did it in a very heavy-handed, Freddy was diddling Jason kind of way.
Yeah.
Peter Briggs didn't go that far. Peter Briggs' draft was like, all right, Mrs. and Mr. Voorhees were among the Elm Street parents who burned Freddy. So Jason is a potential victim, as he's one of the Elm Street children. Which is fine, until you start to piece the timeline together.
That's what I was just, that's just what I was doing in my head right now, folks.
Right.
I was looking at Matthew, and I was going, but that doesn't tie in with 1957, folks.
In any way, shape, or form. It's fine. It's fine.
It's the 90s, folks. It was the 90s.
It's fine. It's fine. It's no big deal. But he also had these, there was the FBI was involved, and they were hunting the serial killers, both of them. And then there was time travel. There was a Amanda Kruger assisted time travel, and one of the FBI guys goes back in time, and he realizes that he's the FBI guy who's willing to forge evidence, and he gets thrown back in time to the day that Fred Krueger gets arrested. Now, if you remember way back from Nightmare on Elm Street, folks, that's important, because the reason Fred Krueger was released from jail and did not go to prison for what he did was because somebody forgot to sign on on a page on the on the warrant. So this FBI agent, by the way, whose last name was Cobain, if that gives you any indication of the time that this was written, goes back and signs all the forms and makes sure the chain of custody on Fred Krueger is accurate. So Fred Krueger goes to prison and never becomes Freddy Krueger. And that's how this movie ends. This is one of the better drafts of the interim drafts.
So many drafts.
Yes.
So much money spent on drafts.
Yes. Now, one thing kind of becomes clear, okay? All of the drafts, all of them, the bad ones that I've skimmed, the two good ones here that I read, and good is a relative term. Like, these would be good movies if they weren't Nightmare on Elm Street movies.
Right.
Or Friday movies. All of them focus on Freddy and Jason and an external third force that they end up combating together, separately. You know, very few focus on the Freddy and Jason going at each other.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. That doesn't sound like it's focusing at all on the playground element that cycled through the 80s.
Exactly. And they don't. None of these drafts do. It's not until Mark Swift and Damian Shannon are hired and they're like, "No, it's Freddy versus Jason." That's the whole point. It's who wins in a fight, this guy or that guy. Period. Why are you guys even doing this stuff with Cult of Freddy? Why are you doing this stuff with this? It's simple. We want to see them fight.
I mean, at that point, the Cult of Freddy
had existed through multiple
like
drafts.
almost like it was attached for almost a full decade.
Exactly. Now, there were 12 drafts, 12 separate drafts from 12 separate writers.
And that's not
before Shannon and Swift are hired.
Yeah, and that's not including the rewrite drafts that some of those authors did on their own scripts. Which leads me to the point that Shannon and Swift put in 10 drafts between their initial pitch and the shooting script. And then the shooting script isn't even theirs because it was rewritten by David Goyer.
Exactly. So it's a lengthy process.
And that's just with the final. That's just with the final.
Yeah.
Writers.
Yeah, and stuff changes during the shoot. Like it keeps changing, and the process is long. We finally get there. In the movie that we all saw, that we talked about. 9. This is episode 9 for us, so 10 weeks ago.
Math.
10 or 11 weeks ago.
Math.
Yeah. 10, 11 weeks ago, a while, folks, we talked about Freddy versus Jason, and we talked about it from the perspective of Jason.
Yep.
But it's Freddy versus Jason. We got to talk about Freddy.
It's really hard to talk about it from Jason without talking about too much of Freddy, right? Because Freddy is the impetus for the fucking movie.
Exactly, because the whole premise hinges on the idea that the world has forgotten who Freddy Krueger is, and that he needs somebody to kill in his name so that the world will remember and fear him again so he can come back.
Yep.
Which is a brilliant premise, and the fact that no matter what else Shannon and Swift came up with, if they came up with that, there's no argument who wrote that story.
Yeah.
It's them. Because there's so many drafts and so many ideas that were thrown at the wall. There is a lot of internet debate about who came up with what.
Yes.
I mean, there's stuff in the Ron Moore, Brandon Braga draft that I would say, yeah, that ultimately kind of made it into Freddy versus Jason. But the premise of, no, we need them to fight each other, it needs to be about Freddy coming back because he's been away for so long, and he needs someone else to bring him back. So he goes to the other guy in hell who's been there a little too long. Is a brilliant conceit. It sets this movie up perfectly, and that's all them. And I love that. The whole movie works just based on that premise. You can forgive a lot of failings of the movie because that premise is very strong.
Yes. And one of the things that I enjoy outside of the premise is that, once again, folks, it's going to be a Freddy movie. It's going to be a nightmare movie. So it's got to go back to the well to start. We got to start with him forging some damn blades.
Yep. We got to start with him forging some damn blades. And we start with something a little different, though. We start with Freddy talking to the camera.
Yeah.
Addressing the audience. It's like we've taken this journey from esoteric dream killer to fucking cartoon in the previous 6 movies. I'm not counting New Nightmare because that's a different experience. But now that he has gotten to fucking cartoon, Freddy has transcended the narrative and is now able to break the fourth wall and be sinister at the same time.
Yes.
But without the cartoony elements of 6, that would not be true. I would not say that that's acceptable if we hadn't gotten to the Acme spike strip in the previous movie. So the fact that they were able to take the disparate tones of Freddy and kind of create, I don't want to say an uber Freddy, because that's what Wes Craven did in New Nightmare, but kind of create an amalgam Freddy that is the perfect of all.
Yes.
Like he's got elements of, the Nightmare 1 Freddy. He's got elements of the Nightmare 2 Freddy. He's got elements of the 3, 4, 5 Freddy, and he's got elements of the cartoon Freddy from 6. And they're in balance with each other.
I'd even say that just what you were talking about with him talking to the audience.
Yeah.
He's now in balance with
the show.
With the show.
Yeah.
Because he was Rod Serling, introducing the segments, talking to the audience, playing the parts in the show, which only worked on the shows because his parts were like 3-4 minute segments.
Yep.
But now
exactly
you tie that element in on top of everything else, and it finally creates. He is not the Freddy that we have grown up watching, America. He is now the idea of
Freddy Krueger. Yeah. Which is why it's such a shame that this is the last time we're going to see him.
Yeah.
So we get another origin flashback, but it's done very subtly, with some intercut footage from the previous 6 movies.
Yes.
Which is very deftly cut together. We talked a lot about Ronnie Yu as a director in the last movie. He's a capable director. He does action very well.
He's Sean Cunningham.
Yes.
Called him a shooter.
Yep. I'll agree with that.
And he sets up brilliant sequences, and for him, it's all about the shot, which left a bunch of the actors.
Yep.
Feeling like they weren't able to have a rapport with their director in the direction of the characters.
Right. And, that kind of shows. So, it starts off with Freddy impersonating Mrs. Voorhees to convince Jason to come back and kill for him. Which works because, and this is the note, as we learned on CCLR, Camp Crystal Lake Revisited, Jason is too stupid to die. He's just too dumb to realize he's dead, so Freddy's able to manipulate him like that.
Your gift is that you cannot die.
And rather than get into the sort of meaty plot, because we've talked about all the characters and how we're introduced to them and when we meet them in the story before, I'm going to do what we did in the first 3 Nightmares. We're going to have a Meet the Kids segment. So first up, we've got Laurie. Laurie, who's played by Monica Keena. She lives in the Elm Street house. Her mom died a year or so ago. We have Kia, played by Miss Kelly Rowland. Who is Laurie's superficial friend who's contemplating some plastic surgery. We have Gib, a somewhat tomboyish, alcoholic sex pot. I think that's fair assessment. Who has a shitty boyfriend.
Played by Miss Catherine Isabel.
Played by Miss Catherine Isabel of one of the best werewolf movies ever made,
yes.
Ginger Snaps. Gib, her big claim to fame is that she has a shitty fucking boyfriend. A shitty boyfriend named Trey.
Babe.
Then there's Trey's best bro, Blake, who comes from the I guess it'd be fair to say the Nicolas Cage School of Acting. Why don't you cut me some fucking slack? Then you've got Linderman, the nerdy dude who likes Kia antagonistically. We've got Freeberg, who is a straight-up ripoff of Jay and Silent Bob. We have Will. Will is this movie's Glenn. No research required. Because Glenn has a sidekick.
Because Glenn has Glenn's.
Glenn has a Glenn. Glenn has Mark. Mark, who is Will's sidekick. And Mark has all the answers about Freddy Krueger.
He's on it.
He's on that shit. And there's one other person. I can't believe I forgot to write him down. I forgot to write down the deputy. Who's the sheriff. And Lachlan Monroe's character, Officer. I'm blanking on him.
I don't have him.
The cop. Lachlan Monroe's cop character, who is very important in like 3 scenes and then vanishes. But he's great because he's Lachlan Monroe.
Because somebody has to bring you all the information about Jason
Voorhees. And that is his job in this movie. He is the exposition dump about Jason. So Jason shows up, brutally murders Trey, who, by the way...
Stubbs,
yes. Deputy Stubbs. Murders the shit out of Trey, who deserves the hell out of it. Like, Trey deserves that shit. We don't like him. He gets folded in half by Jason. It's great. It's probably the most visually interesting kill, and it's one of those that the second you see it, you're like, why did it take until 2003 for them to fucking do that? That is brilliant. That is so Jason Voorhees. But this movie's not about him. It's about Freddy Krueger coming back, and Laurie overhears the cops mention Freddy's name.
She can't quite place it.
So they take her to the police station. She falls asleep while she's waiting to be talked to, and she has the first Freddy dream sequence of the movie, complete with jump rope girls and these really creepy missing children's posters that are obviously Harry Potter inspired. Like these are from the Daily Mail, folks. The Daily Prophet. They move. These kids watch you move. It's creepy and awesome all at the same time.
And they talk. His name is Freddy Krueger, and he loves children, especially little girls.
Yup.
And he's coming back. Soon, he'll be strong enough.
And he thinks he's strong enough already.
See, that's Freddy's thing. He's overconfident. he's
way
always overconfident.
So while Laurie's having a dream where these kids are like, soon he'll be strong enough, Freddy's like, hold my beer, folks. I'm going to go kill somebody. And he goes after Blake. Blake, who also fucking deserves it. Like, it's almost weird that he's going after Blake. That's a Jason kill. Jason goes after assholes. Freddy goes after, nice, normal folks. It's Jason who goes after the moron. So it's weird. It's very weird.
The thing that I like about him going after Blake isn't him going after Blake at
right.
all. What I really like about him is, so this is the first Freddy trying to kill somebody.
Yes.
And it takes you visually back to Nightmare on Elm Street when he's going after Tina.
Yes.
Because there on
he's
this
a fucking goat. Random fucking goat. Yes. Yes. Also, it's outdoors in the dark, and it's lit like a real neighborhood in the dark. It's meant to.
Yeah.
And Freddy does this really cool thing where his shadow casts out in front of him, solidifies, and rises up. There are a lot of CG effects in this movie that fall flat. That's not one of them. That's brilliant. Yeah. That's why you wait for CG to do a movie like this. Because that's fucking amazing. And it's 10 times better than anything we saw last week in the remake.
Yes, except for the snow transition.
Except for the snow transition. Any Freddy kills we saw last week. And this sort of shadowy thing reaches out and slashes at Blake's chest, but he's just not strong enough. Goes right through him. Sorry. And Blake wakes up to an old-fashioned Jason macheteing. Then we go to Weston Hills, where the real action is happening. This is where the plot kind of kicks in motion. The part of the plot we really didn't talk about 10 weeks ago. Mark and Will. Okay, so Mark is in Weston Hills because he dreamt this guy in a green and red sweater killed his brother, but his brother committed suicide. Like, he knows the green and red sweater dude did it.
Yep.
He's aware. So they put him here in Weston Hills. And his friend, his buddy, is Will. Will, who is Jason Ritter. Yeah, sorry. I don't know why the first name went out of my head. John Ritter popped into my head, and I'm like, no, that's his dad. Jason Ritter, who's in there because he believes he saw Laurie's dad kill Laurie's mom. So, they neither one of them feels they deserve to be in here. And then they see on the news that there are killings in Springwood. And Will thinks, I've got to get back and protect Laurie because killings in Springwood, it's obviously her dad. And Mark thinks, killing in Springwood, it's obviously Freddy Krueger. So they hatch an escape plan. And the escape plan is basically that Mark is going to go apeshit, show some man-ass to a guard, throw some stuff around, so that the guard will take him and sedate him. But before he can do that, he will take the guard's keys, and Will, who has not done anything wrong, will take the keys and the slowly passing out Mark and get the fuck out of Weston Hills. It's not a bad plan, really. If you got a buddy who's willing to do that with you, why the fuck not? But, so they do that, and they start heading home to Springwood. And they arrive in Springwood kind of just in time to add gasoline to the Freddy Krueger fire that Laurie is igniting. Because Laurie is dealing with this dream that she had the night before, where she found out about Freddy Krueger, and she's trying to talk to her friends about it, and Mark and Will show up, and Mark is, rather than the calm guy who comes into the situation, is like, I understand you're having these nightmares. I'm having these nightmares too. Let's talk about it quietly. Instead, he's like, I know him. He's got the song 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you, and he shares all the sort of nightmare fuel about Freddy, and just injects it, and everybody hears it. This gigantic gathered crowd. Also, these two have sort of broken into the high school where they should not be.
Well, they stick out like,
right, like sore thumbs. Also, this is, I'm going to call out, this is where we do see Bob Shea, the principal.
Yes.
Who is very concerned about these two young gentlemen who should not be at the school. So yeah, Mark recites the jump rope rhyme, riles everybody up. And the surprise of seeing Will causes Laurie to pass out and get taken to the nurse's station. Which, this is a nightmare movie. You know what's about to happen, right?
Someone's going to have a dream because somebody's at a doctor's.
Exactly. So Laurie's unconscious. She's going to dream. No, it's time for a classic Dreamtime fake-out sequence. Because Kia is falling asleep in class, and she has a nightmare of Freddy popping out of a fashion magazine and cutting her nose off.
And this is the exact opposite of the shadow striking at Blake. This is CG that does not work.
Exactly. Does not work at all. Now, Will and Mark go and attempt to do research on Freddy Krueger. And what they discover about Freddy is that they can't discover a fucking thing about Freddy. Like, all records of Freddy are scrubbed. Just scrubbed. And Mark kind of starts to put it together here. This is where he starts putting the pieces together, right? That he's like, okay, Freddy's being treated like a disease. Kids who are exposed to the disease are being quarantined and drugged. And this doctor who's in charge of it, who, by the way, is fucking Laurie's dad, is drugging these kids to keep them contained so that Freddy doesn't expose the rest. And as we saw a little bit earlier, this doctor is not only drugging these patients, he's drugging his own daughter with Hypnocil. Now, Hypnocil, if you've been paying attention, folks, is a drug we first saw in Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3. It's the drug that Nancy was on to prevent her dreams.
Yes.
And here, we've now seen it administered to everyone in Weston Hills. We've seen it administered to Laurie. And we're going to eventually do some research on it. Because in this day and age, there is no Glenn. There's the internet. And we find out all about the Hypnocil. And that's going to drive the rest of the plot.
I do have a
Yeah.
nice moment that I really like here with Mark.
Yeah.
When he's realized they're treating it like a disease, and he wigs out as if, what if I screwed up the town's plan?
Well, Will actually says something to him that triggers that moment. Like, Will's like, you definitely
spread some fear today.
Yeah. Which causes him to realize that, maybe I did. And sure enough, dude did. He put enough of the meme of Freddy Krueger in people's minds that it started to go viral.
Mark is the only kid that actually belongs in a
Nightmare movie. Yeah. He's the only one who is a classic Freddy Krueger Nightmare on Elm Street style kid. Then we move into the mid second act party, where everything goes off the rails a little bit. Gib has lost her boyfriend. She's already an alcoholic, like flat out. She's not just a kid who drinks a lot of beer. She's an alcoholic. She goes off alone at this party in the cornfield, right? And she passes out because it's a nightmare movie. If you drink, you pass out. That's the way nightmare movies work. I've seen I know the formula by this point. Alcoholism equals unconsciousness. It starts with Marge and it lasts all the way to the end of the franchise. So she passes out and wakes up in the Dream Foundry. Freddy sort of chases her throughout. He taunts her. He does a neat take on the wall scene from Nightmare 1, where this pipe pulls out and becomes Freddy Krueger, which is kind of neat. It's definitely it's not the best use of CG, but it's certainly okay, I'm with you. This makes up for the nose sequence.
And he pops one of those iconic Freddy lines.
He does.
That becomes an iconic Freddy line.
Yep.
The only thing you have to fear is fear himself.
Yep.
Freddy is commenting on how we view Freddy.
Yep. Exactly. And that's what I like about this movie. That it gives you moments for these two characters where you're like, why wasn't that in a previous movie? That totally should have been a part of the mythos from the beginning.
Yes.
This line, the bed folding of Trey. So he's about to kill Gib. He's got her, and then we've talked about the circumstances of what was happening to her in the waking world over on the other podcast. But Jason kills her in the real world.
Yes. And
Freddy is very, very pissed that Jason just stole his kill, and he goes on a sort of rant, yelling at Jason, even though Jason can't hear him because Jason's awake.
Yeah.
And Jason's just Jason. He goes off on a sweet fucking rampage of burn a nation and killing. Because this is where it becomes a Friday the 13th movie. Like, this is the payoff for Jason. Like, this is the Jason movie, and the ending of it would be here.
Yes.
Right?
Like this, and it's amped up to 11 Friday Massacre.
Fucking totally. But it is a Friday Massacre that happens very, very, very fucking quickly. It's even out in a cornfield. It's a Friday the 13th woods-style killing. All the kids who are going to carry out the rest of the movie escape. Will drives Lori back to her place and explains that he saw her dad kill her mom. And then her dad shows up, sees that she's in a car with this kid, yanks him out of it. By the way, the car they're in is Marx Brothers van. Marx Brothers sweet ass van. Let's be honest here. It's a sweet ass van for a sweet ass teen.
One of the things that I noticed doing the rewatch for this, particularly in this scene, is how much bigger the Dr. Dad, is than Will.
Yeah.
How much bigger Lachlan Monroe as Stubbs is bigger than Linderman. There's this proportionality of size going on with adults and teens.
Very much so.
The only guys that fit bigger than the adults in this are Freddy and Jason.
Yep, very much so. Very much so. So after being dragged inside in the rain, by the way, it's fucking raining. Like, it's the middle of a thunderstorm now. Like, lightning is like seriously attacking the Elm Street house. Like, there's so much lightning crashing once we're inside the Elm Street house. It's like, seriously? So Lori takes this time to confront her dad, who, in true Elm Street fashion, doesn't respond to the accusation about drugging her, or drugging the kids, or being involved, or killing her mother. None of that. He just says she needs to go to sleep and tries to give her more Hypnosa. Because it's a Nightmare on Elm Street movie. If you've got a problem, your parents' job is to tell you to go to sleep. Like, isn't that what this franchise is all about? Like, whoever wrote this obviously also could have written Go the Fuck to Sleep. Like, same guy. So instead, she runs away, hooks back up with Will, and they go to Mark's house. Now, Mark's house. No one has noticed that Mark's home? Or no one else is home?
I'm going to go with the second one.
I'm guessing. It's got to be that nobody else is home. And that means nobody's there to save Mark, because Mark is having a dream about his brother's suicide. And his brother comes back to life, and we very quickly realize that his brother's actually good old Freddy Krueger. And Freddy can affect Mark in real ways. He's finally there. He's back. And he's going to prove it to us. He lights Mark on fire. He slashes Mark's face in the real world. Mark actually ends up on fire in the real world, and once the fire burns away, he's been branded with the phrase, Freddy's back.
On his back.
On his back. Which, if you look at internet forums, has led to many terrible jokes about how, no, that's Mark's back.
No, it's Freddy's.
It's consistently bad community we hang out in here. Yes. It's Freddy's now, bitch. So yes, Freddy is back. The surviving group have a little team powwow when they're talking about what they need to do. They're coming up with their plan, blah, blah, blah. It's all cool. Until finally, in the middle of their legitimate planning, they're like, well, maybe we could just sacrifice someone. Yeah, maybe we could just sacrifice a virgin. And they all start looking at Lori. And then her dad just shows up all of a sudden. It's very weird. And then her dad starts making out with her. And it's Freddy. It's a dream. She fell asleep. It's a nightmare movie. I should have known that was coming.
Yeah, but it's a weird nightmare.
It is a weird nightmare.
Because Freddy normally doesn't use your friends against you like that.
Right?
Like, this is a an interesting newish tactic.
He uses her friends against her immediately after she has this sort of realization line of dialogue that I hate, everyone hates, but it is, in the terms of the narrative of this film, the answer to the problem.
Yeah.
Like, starts using her friends against her right after she says what she thinks is the solution to the problem, which is, of course, the infamous Freddy died by fire, Jason died by water. How can we use that? Ugh. I hate that line. It's the same ugh noise I made 10 weeks ago. It's still bad. It's still stupid. It's still inconsistent with both of the movies. But it's okay. It's fine.
Out of this dream, she does what someone always
Exactly.
does in this movie. She pulls an ear out. Ear, hat, what have you.
The hat's a little more believable. I mean, she yanked his ear straight off his head. That is Freddy.
It wouldn't take much.
It's not really attached. So then Will explains about Hypnosil, and then they do an internet search about Hypnosil to find out what it does, and we find out that it still hasn't been approved by the FDA in 2003.
So it's been waiting for FDA approval for 16 years.
Yep. So they decide what they're going to do is they're going to go to Weston Hills, they're going to break in, they're going to steal the supply of Hypnosil. And they do, and it's incredibly easy to break into fucking Weston Hills. Like, really easy to break into Weston Hills. Takes no time at all. I mean, thankfully, they still have the key card that they stole off the guard.
Yes.
However, in a real security environment, you would expect that key card would no longer be active, considering it was stolen by 2 escapees 2 days earlier. But, that's okay. Freeburg has the most visually interesting Nightmare on Elm Street Freddy-style dream of the movie, where we're able to take sort of a Freddy dream construct, like the Freddy snake or, something akin to it, and do it very simply in a CGI manner, when Freeburg has this kind of Alice in Wonderland dream of a Freddy slug smoking a hookah with him.
Yep.
So that he can possess Freeburg and pour all the Hypnosil down the drain.
It's weird because Freddy's not a big possessor.
No.
The only time we really see Freddy possess somebody is in Freddy's Revenge.
Yep. Which led me to my joke, is it Jesse Freeburg? Because maybe he is. We know that Jessies have superpowers. They can just appear in bedrooms. We didn't see Freeburg do that, but we don't know he can't. And maybe Freddy can only possess people named Jesse. It's possible. I don't know. Now, while all this is going on, Jason's here too. Okay, Jason has followed the kids, and there's parallel destruction happening.
Yes.
Freddy's fucking up their plan one way through possessing Freeburg. Jason's fucking up their plan another way by killing people.
Yes.
And we talked all about the Freddy version last time. So if you're curious what Freddy's doing, what Jason's doing, go back and listen to Camp Crystal Lake Revisited episode of Friday the 13th, Freddy vs. Jason, where we covered the whole Jason side of the story. Eventually, though, the kids, in their zeal to escape Jason, run past Freeburg, who is possessed by Freddy, who has the plan to use a shit ton of tranquilizer on Jason. All these brilliant people who have dealt with Freddy and Jason over the years, none of them have thought of this. I like that. I like that Freddy's the one who's like, oh, come on, let's just drug the big shit. Let's do it. No problem.
Well, he was around the drugs.
Right.
Because he's in he's in an institution. Nobody else really had the means to do that.
Nobody else had the means, but nobody else even went there. I like that Freddy, the adult in the room is like, oh, come on, this is easy. You drug him. And he goes to sleep, and then I own him.
Well,
and it's smart.
It's easy, it's smart.
But it also shouldn't fucking work.
But also,
it should be a shit ton of horse tranquilizer.
And as an adult, Freddy's the only one that would get close enough to Jason to risk it.
Right.
Your teens aren't going to take that risk.
Exactly.
Because you got to get within arm's length.
And the reason that risk is dangerous,
we see,
pays right off. Because as soon as he's injected, Freeberg is chopped literally in half. Like Jason don't fuck around. And I like that the actor plays this moment of realization. It's almost like Freddy dropped the possession, and Freeberg saw his death coming.
Yes.
Like the actor plays it like, I'm Freddy. I'm not Freddy. Oh, shit.
And I'm dead.
It's a brilliant choice. It's probably the strongest acting from that actor in this whole movie. It's that scene right there. So Jason's unconscious. And now he's in the dream world, and we get our showdown, our first one, and this showdown happens in the Dream Foundry. We're back on Freddy's turf, where we belong. This is a nightmare movie. This is where we should be. It's got a weird color palette thing. It shifts from being green and red. I don't know what Ronnie Yu's doing here. It's not my Dream Foundry. My Dream Foundry's been consistent.
Yes.
Dream Foundry's pretty much the same place. It's a different location every time, but it's kind of the same place.
Yes. And that's the thing that's beautiful about it. In spite of it being several different locations, different sets, spread out over the movies, there's a uniformity to it.
Yep. Everybody follows that same basic approach to shooting it that Wes did, except Ronnie Yu. I mean, even the director of the remake, the Dream Foundry is effectively the Dream Foundry. It's a little different, but it's mostly the same. All right, so we get a showdown with Jason and Freddy where Freddy is really at the height of his powers.
Yes.
Because you're on his turf. Like Jason cuts his arms off and they grow back. Freddy starts, just bopping him around the room like he's a pinball, and starts literally playing a game of pinball with a Jason that's just being thrown around in the air. And it ends with all the fighting. It ends with Freddy coming face to face with Jason's biggest fear, which in this is water, which again makes no sense, unless of course you can divorce yourself from the fact that Jason in the waking world has no problem with water. But in his subconscious, in his dreams, water is indeed his biggest fear. If you look at it in that regard, it's a little easier to swallow.
It's a little easier to swallow.
A little bit. Not a lot.
I read when I was doing research back for Camp Crystal Lake, one of the things that didn't make it, that they just didn't push forward enough, is that in the original script, is that it's not water. Like Mark Swift and Damon, they are pissed that Goyer rewrote it this way.
Yeah.
Because it's supposed to be drowning.
Right.
It's not water.
Right.
It's drowning. It's his fear.
Which would, yes, that makes sense. That should be his fear. That's what killed him.
Yes.
The first time. So yeah, that would make more sense. But it's not in here.
No.
It's
what it
but
is.
Narratively, we'll move past it because it gives Freddy the absolute upper hand. He's able to completely dominate Jason and basically just assumes complete control of him.
Yes.
Shoves his claw right into Jason's head and throws Jason into deep, deep, deep into the dream world. Deeper than the Dream Foundry. The kids, meanwhile, while all this is going on, are driving Jason back to Camp Crystal Lake. We are once again revisiting Camp fucking Crystal Lake. Can't escape this place. It's not going to happen. But we're getting close, though, so Lori takes a shit ton of Hypnosil so that she can go in and get Freddy out. She sets a timer on her watch. That's right, timer on her watch to wake her up. Sets an alarm.
That's what you do.
That's to wake her up. Okay, so when she goes to sleep, though, she doesn't enter her nightmare. She doesn't go to the foundry like most people do. She shows up in Jason's nightmare. And Jason's nightmare is about being little Jason, being bullied and being thrown into the lake and being, kicked and punched and spit on.
Which is all news to me, folks.
Right, yeah.
Like, I've been through the Fridays. I don't remember Pamela talking about this part.
Well, to be fair, it's not like that franchise is exactly very consistent with its continuity. So,
yeah,
a little creative license. I'm sort of okay with it.
well, I'm fine with it. It's just like, wow.
Yeah.
This is a retcon.
Big one. This little boy's being bullied, and Laurie tries to save this little boy from being bullied. But they throw him in the lake anyway. She can't do anything. And then we find out that Freddy's very clearly in control. And this little boy's not a little boy. He's Jason Voorhees. And he is pulled down to the bottom of the lake. And in the real world, he starts to drown. And that's when you have the scene that we talked about last time with Kia having to give him mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. Jason Voorhees wakes up, leaving Freddy and Laurie alone in the dream world. Laurie immediately becomes the target of Freddy's fascination. So he takes her on this sort of flashback dream tour of the death of her mother. Apparently, what Will had actually seen was her dad trying to kill Freddy, who was killing her mom.
Yeah, that makes about as much sense as anything.
But we do have that connective tissue line, which I've now come across on multiple websites. The statement that it's an ad-lib from Robert Englund. I always had a thing for the bitches that live in this house. That was Robert. Not the script. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, it creates a continuity that the script doesn't really give you. Makes sense. Question is he including Jesse in that? I mean, maybe. Jesse was kind of his paramour in number 2 in a weird way. So, he did live in the house.
I mean,
yeah.
Because there's so few who actually live in the Nightmare House.
Right. I mean, really, there's only those 2. And now Laurie.
Yep.
Nancy, Jesse, Laurie. He could also be referring to Marge. That could be the plural that he's referring to. And he does this, creepy sex up the girl in the nightmare thing, like he does. It's standard Freddy fare here. And then suddenly, well, first off, I want to point out that her watch alarm goes off and she doesn't wake up. So there's this amazing beat where somebody's in the dream world and their alarm and it doesn't go off or it does go off, but she's too asleep and it's a great moment that we called out last week, which is the next movie when they stole it from this movie.
Yeah.
They steal a lot from this movie in the remake.
Well, this is the big granddaddy of moneymakers, so if
you take what works. You take what works, exactly. So they suddenly wake up because Laurie has burned her arm in the real world. Holy shit, some shit is going down in the real world because they're not in a van anymore. They're in a cabin at Camp Crystal Lake. It's fucking on fire, and Jason Voorhees is in the room, machete in hand, tearing through some shit. If you're curious what's going on, please go listen to Camp Crystal Lake Revisited, where we talk about all the Jason Voorhees hijinks.
So much chaos.
But from a Freddy perspective, it's interesting that he wakes up in the middle of this. And immediately, all bets are off because Freddy was real concerned with Laurie. And then he woke up in the real world, and there's Jason fucking Voorhees.
And Fire.
Jason was really concerned. And Fire, yes. he is weakened by the
Well,
fire.
I don't know
Not weakened, but he is definitely put off by it.
Like, the look on Freddy's face is like, I don't know if he's more afraid of Jason
Or the fire.
or the ring of fire around him.
Right. And Jason goes from being very concerned about Linderman
Oh, I gotta kill that Linderman.
to being very concerned about that Freddy Krueger.
I gotta kill that dude that was just messing with my mind.
I love that turn. It's so subtle. It's a Jason thing. You never see a reaction, but the hockey mask just moves slightly to Freddy, and you're like, you can read so much into it. Like you think behind that mask, those eyes got about 8 inches bigger, and he just started rushing it.
I know, like, I'm pretty sure that if these kids could just get away from Camp Crystal Lake at this point, Jason doesn't give a fuck about them.
Oh yeah, Jason's done with those kids. If they can escape, he's gonna deal with Freddy. They're done. They're safe. It's over. However, so now we have the opening salvo of the bout in the real world, where Jason can literally beat the shit out of Freddy.
Yes.
And does. Starts to. Like, he's punching him, he's throwing him through things, he slams him through the windows, yanks him down the wall, he throws him onto a roof. The kids are running, there's chaos. There's a brief interlude where Freddy goes after Laurie and Will. Kia interrupts and gets killed by Jason. Linderman got kind of left to die because he got thrown onto some sort of mounting equipment, and just unceremoniously dies by himself in the woods. I think he's probably the only one in the whole franchise who just gets left to die. Either franchise.
It just kind of bleeds out.
Just bleeds out. It's fucking weird. But Freddy and Jason just keep fucking battling it out. They battle it out on the campsite. They're throwing, and everybody gets thrown in this movie. What is that? Like, Jason hits people and they go flying.
Do you want a fun answer or a real answer?
I want a fun answer.
Gravity bends its will to Jason.
Okay, real answer.
Ronnie, you liked wire work.
It's stupid looking. Like, there are a couple times where it feels appropriate.
Yeah.
There's a lot of times where it doesn't.
Yes. He's a big fan of wire work coming out of the international cinema he did.
So, they battle it out. They end up throwing each other onto the construction site. There's a construction site here. They're obviously building something. Walmart. Who knows?
This is another cut plot point.
Yeah.
There was supposed to be a condominium corporation coming in to build on Jason's hallowed grounds of Camp Crystal Lake.
Fair enough.
This was like the subplot in Jaws that didn't make it into the movie either.
Gotcha. So there's air tanks. Like Jaws, ironically enough, it comes down to using air tanks.
Yeah.
Timely reference, sir. Freddy chops the nozzles off these things and shoots them at Jason like a fucking missile. And there's lots of them.
Torpedoes away.
And he gets to be at his most scenery chewing good.
Yes.
Here, fighting Jason Voorhees, who is at his most brutal. It's an amazingly fun fight. It's not a well-told story anymore. It basically proves that there never needed to be a story. We just needed this. We just needed to get here. Somehow. The movie just needs to bend around enough to get us here. Forgive the rest of it, because we're here now.
See,
they're beating each other up.
Now, I know you're not a fan
Yeah.
of the concept here.
Yeah.
But Ronnie, you sold it as... so basically, these guys are just like two WWE wrestling superstars going at it?
I see that. I definitely see that.
And that's how he treated the fight.
So, yeah, and it's kind of an intro bout, a build up, and then at the end, then the pay-per-view.
Yeah.
At the end. I like that. Fair enough. They fly through the air and they land on the docks. The docks over Crystal Lake itself. Finally, we're right on the docks again. This is where we've ended all the Good Friday movies. Either on the docks or on the water. Perfect. So Freddy uses his finger claws to cut off Jason's fingers, causing Jason to drop his machete. Freddy picks up that machete and starts wailing on Jason.
Yeah.
Which is really kind of fucking amazing, you know? He's wailing on him. Like, you have claws, you have knives. It's an indignancy to take the man's weapon and stop using your own. He does, however, use his claws briefly, and he stabs into Jason's eyes. And Jason's like, fuck this. You took my machete, I'm gonna take your arm. It just rips Freddy's arm off. Which is just so fucking out there. But I love it. And it looks real easy to do. I don't think ripping an arm off is as easy as Jason makes it look in this movie. While they're fighting, though, there's gas and propane spilling everywhere because of the rebar that shot out and hit everything, and there's fire everywhere. So Laurie just lights up 2 fucking torches, runs to the docks. She throws one onto the dock so that it lights this ring of fire around them. She throws another at a propane tank so that there's a massive explosion. Freddy and Jason are both thrown into Crystal Lake. Laurie and Will both think it's over. But then we see this sort of shape rising out of the lake. We see a machete.
And more important, we hear the sound design here. We hear these footsteps, these pounding, Jason Voorhees plodding footsteps.
But it's not. It's Freddy. He's come out of the lake. He's wielding Jason's machete. He's stalking toward Laurie when suddenly his own glove bursts through his chest. And so a little bit more of the arm as we realize that Jason has used Freddy's claw to stab through Freddy's heart. Freddy drops the machete. Jason falls into Crystal Lake because
he's had the shit beat out of him in this fight. He's had rebar through him. He's been lit on fire. His eyes have been gouged out. This dude is done. We have finally seen a fight where Jason has just given it all and is done.
He's tapped out. Does that mean it's over? Not necessarily. Not necessarily. I mean, it's Jason Voorhees. He's come back from worse.
He's too dumb.
He's too dumb to die. So Laurie grabs the machete and screams, "Welcome to my world, bitch!" as she chops Freddy's head off, and both his head and his body fall into Crystal Lake. "Welcome to my world, bitch," which is another line that is stolen by the reboot that we talked about last week. So Linderman's dead, Kia's dead. The only people left alive are Laurie and Will, and they fucking bolt. So they're not stupid. And there were alternate endings galore. They struggled to figure out how to end this movie, and it turns out the simplest ending is the best. Because at the end of the movie, Jason fucking Voorhees just rises out of Crystal Lake and walks away with Freddy's head in his hand. His stumpy hand. I don't know how he's got that firm a grip on him, but sure. And then the last frame is a shot of Freddy's head in Jason's hand. Robert Englund's eye winking at the audience. And that is the last time we will see Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger. That's it. That is the end of Freddy vs. Jason.
I know, and I love the wink because I've seen people take it in so many different ways.
Oh yeah.
The wink meaning, here we go. It's a typical nightmare ending. Wink. I've seen it also people going, you ever seen That's All, folks, when Porky Pig winks?
Yeah.
Well, Freddy's turned himself into a cartoon, so there's that motif.
Yeah.
Then there's the cynical, we just took your money.
Right. Yes. And then there's the the more vaudevillian, well, I'll get him next time. Kind of come back again. We'll do this all over again. It might go down different. Kind of an ending.
Yes.
Which is, also fun. That's my preferred version of it. Even though we never got that. We instead got a terrible reboot. So yes, Freddy vs. Jason. We've given the broad strokes overview of our thoughts on the movie before. I'm not gonna do best and worst kill because we'd be talking about it from Freddy's perspective, and they'd be the same one because there's only one.
Freddy only gets the one.
Freddy only gets the one in this movie. He does kill the little girl at the beginning as Fred.
Yes.
And
I don't really count that.
I don't count that one. And he does kill Laurie's mom. I don't count that one either. There's a flashback to something.
Yeah.
But, that's like if we actually saw Stu and Billy kill Sydney's mom in a flashback in Scream. Yeah, I wouldn't count it.
No.
Even though it would happen on screen. So the best and both the best and worst kill is the kill of Mark. Poor Mark. Who we actually met the actor who plays Mark as well.
Yes.
And the actor who plays Mark's brother.
Who was also in the Christmas movie.
A Christmas Story?
Yes.
Yeah. We met them both at a horror convention. Ironically enough, the same horror convention where we met Rob Ressler.
It was
a busy weekend.
It was a busy nightmare weekend.
It was. So this is the end of the Nightmare franchise, right? This is sort of a broad strokes look at the story of Fred to Freddy and back. Going back through, I know you had a favorite when we started. Is your favorite from before still your favorite?
Yes.
Okay. What is your favorite?
My favorite is the first one.
Okay. My favorite is still Wes Craven's New Nightmare, with the original following in at a close second. What's your least favorite Nightmare on Elm Street movie?
My least favorite is Freddy's Dead.
Freddy's Dead? Okay.
I'd rather watch Freddy's Revenge.
Yeah, Freddy's Revenge for being as weird and out there as it is and being a very poorly constructed film. It's got some charm to it. The performances are fun.
Yes.
But it's badly written, it's badly structured. It's a little out there in terms of the approach to Freddy. The idea that we go immediately from his world to trying to bring him into our world seems a strange choice given the rest of the franchise.
Yes.
Now, had he come out into the real world and we then had the franchise continue to follow him, but in the real world, well, that would have been a little different.
I
don't think that would have worked.
I don't think we'd be sitting here talking about it.
I really don't.
But still, I'd rather watch that than Freddy's Dead.
Yeah. I would say that the absolute worst of this for me, because I'm counting the whole thing, is the reboot. I mean, that's the worst for me. Yeah, you didn't even think about it.
No, because
right over that shit.
I don't count it as part of the franchise.
But it is. It says a Nightmare on Elm Street right there on it. I mean, it's more clearly a part of the franchise in nomenclature than Freddy's Dead.
That is true.
I will say this though, Freddy's Dead, it's a mishmash of a story and it's not really handled well, but you can definitely see the storytelling prowess of a director at the start of a career that it looks like it's going someplace, right? You can see it. There's strong visuals there. You can't see that in all of the Dream trilogy.
No.
Yeah, I mean, Dream Warriors, for as great as that is as a story, is not necessarily as visually compelling
It's kind of flat.
It's very flat. It's very flat.
And then for Master,
right,
which really
is a terrible story.
Thin on story.
Is visually fantastic.
Like
I almost wish I could go back in time and be like, okay, no, Rennie Harlan should direct this one, and then swap, please.
Yes.
Yeah. If you had to pick a favorite moment, though, across the whole franchise, a perfect Freddy moment across the whole franchise.
See, it's for me, it almost feels stupid.
Right.
But it's that moment when Freddy puts on the sunglasses on the beach.
Okay. I can see that.
That moment is so MTV.
Mm-hmm.
That it's so 1980s. Freddy, by donning those glasses and the sardonic look he has on his face, ascends from just a movie character to what Freddy is.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm still gonna have to say my favorite Freddy moment of the entire franchise is constructed in a story where he's not actually Freddy. It is the moment in Wes Craven's New Nightmare where Robert Englund is standing in front of the audience and doing that slow motion, exact duplication of the scene from Freddy's Revenge. That is such the moment that defines that character. Sums him up perfectly. Will we have as fun a time breaking down the adventures of Victor Crowley? I don't know.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if we will, because Victor Crowley is not embedded in pop culture psyche like Freddy Krueger is.
Well, yeah.
Like in Freddy's embedded in ways that Jason's not.
Yeah.
That Michael Myers isn't.
Yeah.
That Leatherface isn't.
Yep. Very true. Very, very true. So it's a little bittersweet. We're at the end of what's probably the most iconic of what we've done so far and what we're going to do for a little while. I mean, unless we're going to do something crazy like do the Halloweens at some point, we've hit them. We're done. The big ones are over. We'll have to come back to them. And it's weird to move on to something a little smaller. I gotta say, I'm not entirely sure I'm ready for it.
Well, it's like we're at the start of
the Fridays again, a little bit,
and even the start of the Nightmares again, because it was small. It wasn't meant to be
big.
What it became.
Right. That's
very
true.
Neither were, and even
very true.
If we ever get around to doing the Halloweens, it's the same story.
Very true.
None of the big ones were meant to be the big ones.
Exactly. I think we should get it. We should obviously do Financial Corner one last time for Mr. Freddy Krueger.
Yeah, let me flip back to my Camp Crystal Lake Revisited notes.
Right.
That's where I have it.
Well, isn't it nice that you have those on hand?
It is. All right, so this movie was made by itself. Mm-hmm. It was $25 million, $6.8 million in pre-development.
Okay.
With all of those scripts.
Right.
For a domestic return of $82.6 million.
Oh wow. Whew. Yeah, buddy. It's a big success.
It is.
There are rumors that they've been going around for a very long time that basically, after failure after failure after failure in 2002, 2003, this movie was greenlit knowing full well that it would succeed. That New Line pulled the trigger like, okay, let's do this because this is a guaranteed success. This will put money in the fucking bank. And it did. Not enough. The failures had leveraged the company to the point where it was make or break. and it didn't make. Even that big money didn't save the franchise. Didn't save the company.
Nope. And also, at some point, I know it got greenlit because of that, but they also had to recoup.
Right.
That's
Oh yeah.
$6.8 million somehow.
Right. Exactly. They didn't want to count that as spec cost that just went away. So, from Wes Craven's sort of obsessive nightmare about this article he read to this pop culture extravaganza that is this movie, to a reboot that doesn't quite understand any of it, is this the depth and breadth of our franchise. Do you have any closing thoughts about Mr. Freddy Krueger or Nancy Thompson or any of these characters, any of the storyline? Last thoughts on Nightmare on Elm Street.
It only works because it works.
Yep.
Any other time, it doesn't work. If it comes out 3 years earlier,
it fails.
Doesn't. Comes out 3 years later, fails. It came along at the dying edge of the golden age of the slasher and took something and poured an incredibly fantastic new energy into it.
Yep.
In ways that had not been done since Halloween.
And I think the biggest component is that without Robert Englund, it doesn't work.
No, it does not.
Anyone else in that mask would not have created the kind of Fred Krueger in Nightmare on Elm Street that has the legs to become Freddy Krueger in Dream Warriors. And that's what it takes. It takes being able to build on that solid performance in the first movie and then twist it into this amazingly different character that continues to evolve throughout the entire franchise.
Yeah.
That's another thing, that Freddy evolves from movie to movie to movie to movie, whereas your typical slasher villain remains stagnant. Your Michael Myers is Michael Myers, is Michael Myers, is Michael Myers. Jason Voorhees is Jason Voorhees, is Jason Voorhees, is Mecha Jason Voorhees, is Jason Voorhees. However, I did tease something at the very beginning of this, and I will pay it off. We all know the story from Camp Crystal Lake Revisited's coverage about how Ken Kersinger took over,
Yep.
and our good friend Mr. Kane Hodder was ousted from this movie. I saw an article while I was doing research about a stealth cameo. There's a piece of footage in Weston Hills where on the TV they're watching a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie, in which
They got to be watching number 3.
it's number 3, and it is one of the scenes that Kane Hodder doubled the stuntman who was doing Leatherface.
Okay.
So, he was telling the story. He's like, I didn't even know. I was watching it for the first time the other day. I saw the scene. I was like, that's me! Kane Hodder cannot be kept out of a Friday the 13th movie. You cannot keep him away.
And also at one of the conventions this year, they are doing Robert Englund versus Jason.
Oh, nice.
In that you can have your picture taken with Robert Englund and Kane Hodder. Robert Englund is dressed like normal folk, but Kane Hodder is Jasoned out.
Oh, nice.
So they finally
right get to be together in character,
Yeah.
sort of. That's amazing. All right. Well, my final thoughts. We've gone through this journey together. It's one of my favorite franchises, and through the magic of his performance, through all that latex, Robert Englund was able to do the thing that Freddy said, because we are, in fact, all his children now. For Every Town Has an Elm Street, I have been Matthew J. Blanchard.
I've been Patrick J. Blanchard.
Join us here next week. We're going to start talking about some sweaty bayou killing.
Join us for Honey Island Swamp Tours.
Welcome to my world.